In this lesson, I'm going to talk about some of the editing shortcuts you can use when editing your code. I'll open up pc.html and start the live preview. We'll be adding this next section to our HTML, which can be found in the gist linked to the lesson. First, I'm going to turn word wrap off. I mentioned in my lesson on setting up the workspace that I like to keep word wrap turned on because I don't like horizontal scrolling. That's true, but I spend most of my time editing JavaScript code, and I don't have lines that are as long as I do when I'm in an HTML file. With HTML files, having word wrap turned off keeps things looking cleaner, especially when I'm working on a smaller screen. I'm also going to close the sidebar so I can see as much of the line as possible. The first shortcut I recommend remembering is Ctrl+X to delete a line. That shortcut is used everywhere to delete current selections, and that's no different in brackets. That's the cut shortcut, and you can cut selected code and paste it elsewhere with Ctrl+V, just like you would in a word processor, your email program, or anywhere you type things. You could also use Ctrl+C to copy the text to your clipboard. There's nothing wrong with using those three shortcuts to cut, copy, and paste, but I mostly only paste code if I'm copying from one file to another or far away from the original code. When working in a single file, I use other shortcuts, which I'll explain shortly. However, back to just Ctrl+X for now. I use this all the time to delete a line. The nice thing about it is you don't have to have the entire line selected. As long as your cursor is on the line when you type Ctrl+X, that line will get deleted. Your cursor can be anywhere in the line, including in the middle, which is often the case when you're writing code and moving around. If you do have something selected, however, clicking Ctrl+X will cut just the selection. When I want to copy something, instead of copying and pasting, what I usually do is duplicate lines of code. That shortcut is Ctrl+D. Regardless of where my cursor is, when I hit Ctrl+D, I'll duplicate that line right below the current one. Now, I don't really want that line, so I can hit Ctrl+X to delete it, or I could use Ctrl+Z to undo my change. This duplicate code shortcut will work on selections as well as a line. So if I have a selection of code selected, it will duplicate that selection. I can duplicate a word or two, or I could duplicate a large group of code. How you select the code can matter when you're doing this. Notice if I start dragging my mouse right after the last div and drag up. I haven't really selected the full line of that last div. So when I duplicate the code, it doesn't go on a new line. So try to be careful to start selecting from below the current line. And also, if you want a blank line to duplicate, make sure you select that also. This time I got the blank line and it got added in the correct spot. This is a subtle difference, but it's really helpful to get it right when selecting your code so you don't have to worry about fixing the first line that was duplicated. So if you have something selected, whether it's multiple lines or just a word, that selection will get copied exactly and put right after the end of the selection. If you don't have anything selected when you hit Ctrl+D, it will duplicate that current line and put it below. Now, if I want to create a new section, I can delete out the details but start with the correct format. Two more shortcuts that are very common in code editors are to add comments. To add a single line comment, you can hit Ctrl plus the /. To add a block comment, you can use Ctrl plus Shift plus the /. Brackets knows how to format the comment based on the type of file you're in. So since I'm in an HTML file, if I hit Ctrl+/ when on a line, it comments that line out with proper HTML comment syntax. If I have code selected, then it will put the comments directly around the entire block. Now, you might notice that the comments are lining up at column 1. There are many things about brackets that I love and think work better than other editors, but this is not one of them. I'd prefer my comments to line up with the code. So if I make a tighter selection just around the actual text and do a block comment, it lines up the way I want. This is a little more work than I'd like, but that is the workaround to get it to line up properly. You can uncomment lines by hitting Ctrl+/ again, so this shortcut is a toggle really. You don't need to add the shift to the shortcut when turning off a block comment, and you only need your cursor anywhere inside of that comment. The last two shortcuts I want to talk about in this video involve moving your cursor to the next or previous line. When I'm writing code, there are many times when I find myself wanting to add a blank line either before or after the current line, but my cursor is in the middle of the line. Before I learned these shortcuts, I was constantly trying to move my cursor to the beginning or end of the line before I hit Enter, so I wouldn't do this. If you have a home key or end key on your keyboard, it becomes a little bit easier, but I often work on keyboards without those keys, and these two shortcuts are easier to use. If you hit Ctrl+Enter, regardless of where your cursor is, you'll get a new blank line below your current line. The cursor will be at the beginning of the new line, and it will be indented correctly. If you add Shift to that shortcut, you'll put the new blank line before your current line. These two shortcuts are two of my most used, and I recommend that you learn them if you don't use them already. In this video, I've been selecting code with my mouse to show you how some of the editing code shortcuts work. However, it's much better to learn to select code with the keyboard instead. I'll cover how to do that quickly in the next lesson.